All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into something fundamental for anyone in business.
Absolutely. It's a core challenge.
Long-run profitability, right? And that relentless pressure of competition. I mean, if you're an entrepreneur, this is it. How do you build something that actually lasts?
It really is the defining challenge, isn't it? So today, we're going deep. We want to assess, the true score of a business,
Okay.
forecast how rivals inevitably chip away at success, and maybe most importantly, look at the actual strategies managers can use to, well, build some walls.
Okay, I think before we dive in, we have to establish the ground rules because time horizon makes all the difference here, doesn't it?
Completely. Think of it in two distinct phases. First, there's the short run.
Right.
In the short run, certain things are just fixed. Your factory size, your equipment, the number of competitors you're currently facing, that stuff can't change instantly.
Got it. Fixed capacity, fixed competition.
Exactly. But then there's the long run. That's where the real game unfolds.
Because everything's changeable.
Precisely. Capacity can expand or shrink. New companies can jump into the market. Existing ones can decide to pack up and leave. It's in this long run where every profitable idea, every success story faces its ultimate test.
Okay, so let's jump right into that manager's scorecard then.
Yeah.
Because I feel like this is where a lot of people, maybe even businesses themselves, get tripped up. We see companies reporting profit, right? That's
Yeah.
accounting profit.
Mm-hmm.
But what's the real difference between that number and the economic profit that we should be using for like strategic thinking?
Yeah, that's the crucial distinction. And it all boiled down to one thing: opportunity cost.
Okay,
See, the accountant is essentially asking, did the money coming in exceed the money going out? So accounting profit is your total revenue minus only the explicit costs,
explicit meaning.
the actual financial outlays: rent paid, wages paid, materials bought, anything that shows up clearly on a bank statement or invoice.
Right, the obvious out-of-pocket expenses.
Mm,
Seems straightforward.
it is. But the economist is asking a much deeper, more strategic question. Is doing this the absolute best use of these resources compared to all the other possibilities?
Ah, okay.
So economic profit is total revenue minus both those explicit financial costs and the implicit opportunity costs.
Implicit costs.
Yeah.
So the things I'm giving up to run this business, not just the things I'm paying for.
Exactly right. And the two biggest ones usually are foregone wages. What could the owner entrepreneur be earning in their next best job?
Right.
And foregone interest, what return could the capital invested in the business have earned somewhere else, maybe even just in a safe investment?
Okay, so this leads to a really important point then. A company could be showing, say, a $200,000 accounting profit, which looks great on paper.
That's fantastic.
But if the owner had to give up a $300,000 salary at their old job to start this company,
And economically, they're actually $100,000 in the hole.
wow, okay. So the positive accounting number completely hides a bad decision, economically speaking.
That's precisely it. For a new venture to be genuinely worthwhile, truly adding value, the economic profit must be positive. If your economic profit is zero,
That just means.
it just means you're earning exactly the same return you could have gotten in your next best alternative. You're covering all your costs, including those opportunity costs, but you're not actually getting ahead compared to what you sacrificed.
Okay, that makes sense. So how does this translate down to like the level of each product sold? You talk about profit margins. How do average revenue and average cost fit in?
Okay, so average revenue is usually just the price you charge per unit. Simple enough.
Right. Price.
To make an economic profit, that price has to be higher than your average cost per unit. And critically, when an economist talks about average cost, that figure already includes a share of all those implicit opportunity costs we just discussed.
Got it. The economist's cost definition is broader.
Much broader. It reflects the true full cost of production.
And it's not like costs just keep falling the bigger you get, right? That U-shape.
Exactly. Average cost doesn't just drop forever. Typically, it starts high, then falls, sometimes quite rapidly, but eventually it starts to creep back up.
Why does it fall initially?
That's mostly about spreading fixed costs. Think about setting up a business, maybe a car wrapping business. You buy that expensive specialized wrapping tool. That's a fixed cost.
Right. Doesn't matter if you wrap one car or 50.
Exactly. But the cost of that tool per car wrapped plummets as you do more cars. You're spreading that initial investment over more output.
That efficiency gain is what pulls people in, I guess. So why does it eventually turn around and start rising again?
Well, eventually you run into inefficiencies or rising variable costs. Maybe you need to hire more staff and the best people are already employed, so you pay more. Or you pay overtime.
Okay.
Or maybe you outgrow your ideal space and have to rent a second, less efficient location. Things just get more complex and costly to manage at a larger scale.
So the profit margin, which is just price minus that average cost, that margin tells you if you're making an economic profit on each unit. If it's positive, you are. If it's zero or negative, you're not.
You've got it. That's the per unit check.
Okay, so now we understand what real economic profit looks like. The big question then becomes, what happens when other people see you making that positive economic profit?
It's like blood in the water, right?
Huh, that's a good way to put it. And that leads us straight into the long-run dynamics, which are really driven by what we call the rational rules of entry and exit. And we usually start by assuming a market with, well, relatively free entry.
Meaning it's not super hard or expensive for someone new to start up.
Exactly. No major roadblocks making it difficult to become a competitor.
So what's the rule for entry then?
The rational rule for entry is simple. If potential competitors look at the market and expect they can earn a positive economic profit, meaning they think their price will be higher than their average cost, they will enter.
Because why wouldn't you chase a better than average return?
Precisely. Profit opportunities are attractive, so entry is almost inevitable if the path is open. And what's the immediate impact on the companies already there when a new player arrives?
Their world gets tougher. Immediately, you lose some market share. Your firm's demand curve shifts to the left.
The less demand.
Less demand at any given price. And, importantly, customers now have more choices. This makes the demand for your specific product more elastic flatter.
Meaning you have less power to set prices high.
Much less power. It becomes harder to maintain those high prices that were generating the profit in the first place. Your profit margin gets squeezed.
And this entry keeps happening, presumably, until that expected profit disappears.
Exactly. Entry continues until the next potential entrant looks at the market and says, actually, by the time I get set up, the price will probably be competed down so low, I'll only just break even economically.
So entry stops when expected economic profit hits zero. But what about the other side? What if things go bad and firms are losing money economically?
That triggers the rational rule for exit. If existing firms are looking ahead and expect ongoing negative economic profits, meaning price is stuck below their average cost, the rational thing to do is exit the market. Cut your losses.
Okay. And exit just reverses the process.
It does. When rivals leave, the remaining firms pick up the slack. They gain market share.
So their demand curve shifts right.
It shifts right. And because there are fewer substitutes, their demand becomes steeper, again, more inelastic. They regain some market power, some pricing power.
And profitability can be restored for the survivors.
Exactly. Exit continues until the losses stop, until price comes back up to meet average cost for the firms that remain.
Wow. Okay, so it sounds like this constant ebb and flow of entry and exit driven by profit signals leads to a pretty stark conclusion, especially for really attractive opportunities.
It leads to what economists call the zero profit tendency. In any market where entry and exit are relatively free, this dynamic ensures that, in the long run, economic profits are driven towards zero. Desirable profit opportunities attract entry, which competes those profits away. Undesirable losses trigger exit, which eventually eliminates the losses. The long-run equilibrium state is where price equals average cost.
But let's be crystal clear here. When we say zero economic profit, we don't mean the business is failing or going bankrupt, right?
Not at all. This is so important. Zero economic profit means the business is covering all its costs, including those implicit opportunity costs, the foregone salary, the foregone interest.
So they're still making an accounting profit.
Yes, almost certainly a positive accounting profit.
Yeah.
They're making a decent living, earning a return equivalent to their next best alternative. They're just not earning anything extra, anything above and beyond that baseline opportunity cost. It's sustainable, just not exceptionally lucrative in the long run.
We see this play out all the time in the real world, don't we? I remember reading about the drone industry a few years back.
Oh, that's a perfect, almost textbook example. You had this explosion of interest around, the early 2010s? Initial companies were making great margins. That attracted a flood of new entrants. Everyone wanted a piece of the action. Even big established names like Nokia jumped in.
Right.
But what happened? Massive supply, fierce competition, prices plunged. And then you saw headlines about companies like Parrot, one of the early leaders, having to cut hundreds of jobs. Why? Because the profits had been competed away.
So the desirable opportunity basically destroyed itself through competition.
In a sense, yes. Free entry means attractive profits tend to be fleeting.
Okay, so if these rational rules basically sentence any great idea to eventually become just average in terms of profit,
Hmm.
then the real strategic challenge for managers becomes obvious. How do you stop entry? How do you build defenses? What are the actual ways companies create these barriers to entry to keep those economic profits positive in the long run?
Now you're thinking like a strategist. That's exactly the core question. How do you defy that zero profit tendency? And generally, these strategies, these barriers, fall into about four main categories. They're all designed to keep price sustainably above average cost.
Okay, let's break them down. Where do we start? Maybe with the customers.
Good place to start. That's the demand side strategy. The goal here is basically customer lock-in. How do you make it difficult or costly for your customers to switch to a competitor?
Like switching banks can be such a hassle.
Exactly. Switching costs are a powerful barrier. If your bank handles all your automatic bill payments, your direct deposits, maybe integrates with your budgeting app, the sheer pain and friction of moving all that somewhere else can keep you loyal. Even if another bank offers a slightly better rate, it's sticky.
And just being known and trusted counts too, right?
Absolutely. Reputation and goodwill built up over years, sometimes decades, is a massive advantage. Think about your favorite hairdresser or barber. You trust them. There's a relationship. A new place would have to work hard to win you over.
True.
And then there are network effects. This is where the product or service becomes more valuable the more people use it.
Like social media
Or
Amazon reviews.
Amazon reviews are a fantastic example. The sheer volume of reviews on Amazon provides immense value to shoppers. A new e-commerce site starting from scratch has 0 reviews. That's a huge barrier created by the existing network of users.
Okay, so that's locking in demand. What about the other side, making sure your costs are fundamentally lower than any potential newcomer?
Right. Those are the supply side strategies, creating unique cost advantages. One of the most powerful and often underestimated is learning by doing.
Just getting better over time?
Exactly. Companies that have been producing something for longer just get more efficient at it. They figure out shortcuts, optimize processes, reduce waste. There are estimates that for many industries, every time a company doubles its total accumulated production experience, its unit costs fall by maybe 20%, even 30%.
Wow, so the market leader is constantly getting cheaper to operate just by virtue of operating. That's tough for a new guy to beat.
It's a moving target they're always chasing. Then there's simple mass production. Building huge, efficient factories involves massive fixed costs. A small entrant can't match that scale or efficiency initially.
You're stuck with higher average costs.
And don't forget supplier relationships. Big established companies often have enormous buying power. They can demand discounts on raw materials or components that smaller firms just can't get.
Right, better input costs.
It makes a huge difference. We saw reports during supply chain crunches about how automakers with weaker supplier ties really suffered. Strong relationships are a cost advantage. Sometimes incumbents even lock up access to key inputs with long-term contracts.
Okay, demand side, supply side. What about using, well, the government?
Ah, yes. Regulatory strategies. Sometimes the government itself creates or reinforces barriers. The most obvious is patents.
Right, a temporary monopoly for inventors.
Designed to encourage innovation, but it absolutely functions as a barrier to entry for that period. Then there are just complex regulations and licensing requirements. Think about banking, pharmaceuticals, even running a restaurant. These often involve high upfront costs, legal fees, long waiting periods.
Which hit a small startup harder than an established player with a legal department.
Disproportionately harder. And of course, there's lobbying. Incumbent firms can influence regulations in ways that might subtly or not so subtly disadvantage potential new entrants.
Okay, one more category you mentioned. Making rivals afraid to even try.
Yeah, that's entry deterrence. This is about convincing potential rivals that you will fight tooth and nail if they dare enter your market, making the prospect seem unprofitable or too risky.
How do you signal that?
One classic tactic is building excess capacity, constructing more factories or production lines than you currently need.
Why would you do that? It sounds expensive.
It is expensive, but it sends a very credible signal. If you enter, I have the ability to instantly flood the market with output, crash the price, and make life miserable for both of us. Because you've already sunk the cost into that capacity, your threat to use it is believable.
Like a pre-commitment to a price war.
Exactly. Another signal is just having deep pockets, huge financial resources. Think of Apple's massive cash reserves.
Yeah.
It's not just for R&D or acquisitions. It's also a signal. We can sustain losses in a price war far longer than you can. It deters potential challengers who can't afford a long fight.
Makes sense. Any other deterrence tactics?
Oh, yeah. Brand proliferation is a common one, especially in consumer goods. Think about the cereal aisle,
So many brands.
but often owned by just a few giant companies, right? By creating dozens of slightly different brands, they fill every conceivable niche, leaving very little space for a new entrant to find a profitable foothold.
Wow. They saturate the market space.
They do. And finally, there's just developing a reputation for fighting. If a company consistently reacts aggressively to new entrants, cutting prices sharply, launching competing products, future potential entrants will take notice and might think twice. Amazon's aggressive response to Diapers.com is often cited as deterring others later on.
Okay, these barriers, demand, supply, regulation, deterrence, they sound incredibly powerful, especially when established companies use them together. It always sounds like some industries are impenetrable fortresses.
They can certainly seem that way.
Can you give us an example, maybe a story of a company that actually faced this incredible wall of barriers in an established industry and somehow managed to break through?
Well, I think the go-to modern example has to be Tesla taking on the global auto industry.
Right, against giants like Ford, GM, Toyota,
Yeah.
who'd mastered all these barriers over a century.
Exactly. Tesla's story is fascinating because they had to actively combat basically all four types of barriers, often in really innovative ways.
Okay, so let's take the demand side first. Customer lock-in. People were used to gas stations everywhere. How did Musk overcome that huge disadvantage? The lack of a refueling network.
That was arguably the biggest demand-side hurdle, the switching cost for consumers. His counter was audacious. You vertically integrate. Tesla didn't wait for others. They started building their own supercharger network.
Right, they built the infrastructure themselves.
They subsidized it heavily, installing thousands of stations. It was a massive investment specifically designed to neutralize the incumbent advantage of the existing gas station network. It directly lowered the switching cost for potential EV buyers.
Okay, brilliant. What about the supply side? I mean, the cost of designing cars, building factories, it's astronomical. How did they overcome that cost disadvantage against companies that have been doing it forever?
That was another huge challenge. They tackled the immense R&D cost in a couple of ways. First, early on, they partnered with established players like Lotus for the Roadster.
Leverage existing expertise.
Right, reduce some of that initial design and engineering burden. Second, and maybe more strategically, they didn't try to build a mass-market car right away. They started with the low-volume, high-priced Roadster.
Why was that smart?
It served multiple purposes. It generated buzz and proved the technology, sure, but crucially, it provided a smaller-scale platform for learning by doing. They could figure out manufacturing processes, battery technology, supply chains, all without the immense pressure and complexity of immediate mass production like the Model 3 required later. It generated experience and some cash flow.
So learn on a smaller scale before scaling up. Makes sense. Now, regulations. Usually regulations like safety standards are huge barriers protecting incumbents.
Yeah.
How did Tesla navigate that?
This is where they were incredibly clever. While automotive regulations are a massive barrier, Tesla managed to position itself to benefit enormously from a different set of regulations. Environmental policies.
Emission standards, subsidies for EVs.
Exactly. They aligned the company's mission with government goals to reduce emissions. This unlocked access to things like a huge $465 million government loan early on.
Wow.
And critically, it meant buyers of their cars could receive substantial federal and state tax credits or subsidies, sometimes up to $12,500 per car. That directly countered the high initial price point.
So they turned regulations, often a barrier, into a massive financial tailwind.
They absolutely did. They even played states off against each other to get massive tax breaks, like the reported $1.3 billion package from Nevada for the Gigafactory. They used regulatory strategy masterfully to gain advantages, not just overcome barriers.
That really is a masterclass. They tackled demand barriers, supply cost barriers, and even flipped regulatory barriers to their advantage.
It really demonstrates that while these barriers are formidable, they aren't necessarily permanent or insurmountable. But, as the Tesla story also shows, it requires incredibly bold, systemic, and often very costly counter-strategies. And even now, the fight continues. Those incumbents haven't gone away. They're adapting and reinforcing their own positions. The battle for long-run profit is never truly over.
So, wrapping this all up then, what are the key takeaways from our deep dive today?
I think it boils down to three core ideas. First, if you want long-run success, you have to be honest about your performance. Use economic profit, not just accounting profit, to
Yeah.
know your true score.
Acknowledge those opportunity costs.
Absolutely. Second, understand and respect the relentless power of competition and free entry. That zero profit tendency is like economic gravity. It's always pulling attractive profits back down to earth.
You can't ignore it.
You ignore it at your peril.
Nah.
And third, because of that tendency, the only path to sustained above average profitability is to build, maintain, or sometimes cleverly subvert barriers to entry. Strategy is about managing competition.
That really puts the challenge into perspective for anyone listening. It seems the natural state is for attractive opportunities to fade away because of competition.
That's the hard truth of it.
So here's something to think about. If you find yourself on a path that looks incredibly profitable, maybe a new business idea, maybe an investment strategy, knowing what we now know about the rational rule for entry, how much time do you realistically have before competitors arrive and start eroding those economic profits? What concrete, maybe even irreversible step could you take today to start building your own unique barrier to entry? What's that commitment look like? Something to definitely mull over.